Hi. So today I wanted to talk about avoidant personality disorder and how it basically is manifested entirely within your mind. Um, the best description I've ever heard of how it works for somebody is that it's a near delusion because it's it's an outlook and an idea that you have about yourself that is not like factually accurate. Like I've described it before as like I have sort of a black spot on my soul um, that makes me incapable of having the type of relationships that everybody else has. Now, for that reason, the other thing that okay, people, um, the other thing I've heard people describe it as, um, and those people, I'm trying to think if there's ever anybody who wasn't part of this category. Anyway, I'm talking in circles as usual. The thing that I've heard people, and I'll define those people in a second, say is that it is covert narcissism because you think you're so special that you alone are targeted in order to not be able to have relationships with people. But the people who have said that, every single one of them, sitting here thinking, I've never heard it from anybody who wasn't somebody who was actually diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, who then diagnosed themselves, and self-diagnosis is not real, as having avoidant personality disorder. And when they described how they lived their life and what their symptoms were, and people who actually had a clue said, yo, that's not actually avoidant personality disorder, they came back and said, who are you to be the gatekeepers of what this is? And by the way, you think you're so special, maybe you don't have avoidant personality disorder, you actually have covert narcissism. Again, because you think that you're totally different from everybody else in the world. And because you're different, I guess if you're borderline, then being avoidant is special because at least they're not borderline. But back to what I was originally talking about, which is the delusion part. And actually, it is really hard, and it's hard. I'm sure it's really obvious the way I'm describing this. This is, it's not like my videos are super polished or anything, but this is a little extreme as far as how hard it is to basically spit it out and how easy it is for me to go off on a tangent because I know what I'm going to talk about, and I know that there's this big part of me that's going to absolutely reject what I'm saying. But a delusion is something that you think and you believe and you live your life as if it is true, but it's not, in fact, factually true. Um, so it's coming from a different place, and that's why it's a personality disorder as opposed to a true delusion. A delusion is just truly it's a thought process. It's not in response to something else. Um, it's not a reaction to how you are um, living in the world. You've just basically seen something and made this interpretation, and that is your delusion. As opposed to personality disorder, which is that you've had something to trigger it. In other words, some form of abuse, either by a family member or a close friend, or in some cases, a bunch of people, like a bullying situation. And it is self-protection that you're thinking this way. But it's thinking. See, this is where I'm like, shut up, because no, it's not just thoughts. It's not, come on. I wouldn't have lived my life the way I've lived my life, my entire life, if it was just a thought, because a thought is fleeting and it goes away, and you can have a new thought tomorrow, you can have a new thought next minute. So if it's just thoughts, then why is it sticking? Why am I living my life as if it is gospel, if it is just a thought? But supposedly, if you look into philosophy and the idea of the cave, the infamous philosophy of the cave, which is that there is no actual real experience in the world, that it's our interpretation of the experience, and we live as if it's real. The idea, the cave story is that people are seeing shadows on the wall of the cave that were made by the fire. So they're not actually seeing the creatures that are walking through the cave. They're seeing their shadows on the wall, and then they're reacting as if those are the creatures. And that is how all human beings live. Which, I mean, to a degree makes sense. I mean, our senses are imprecise. There's stuff in the air and everything else that, there are colors that we can't see. We know they're there. The animals can see them, but we can't see them. There's chemicals in the air that, we don't even pick up on, but other animals definitely can, and sensitive equipment can pick it up and say, yes, there's this, and this. And we have no idea. I mean, if no idea what's in the air, or, what we're looking at exactly. It's imprecise. And those are actual physical senses. So, that is, again, it's just our perception, our interpretation. Nobody's been able to absolutely definitively say that what I see is blue is definitely what all other human beings and all other animals see as blue. And it could be that somebody else with a different set of eyes looking at this, and how they are seeing the color blue is just radically different from me. There's no way to prove that that's not a fact, that people see different colors when they see, but to them, that's what they were told is blue. This is the color blue. It's blue. If somebody popped their consciousness out of their body and put it in another body, they might suddenly look at that and say, that's not blue, that's purple, that's cream, that's some color I've never seen in before in my life. Who knows? And if that's our physical sensations, I mean, another proof is, you might be in a room with a certain temperature and you're thinking it's chilly, and then you go outside where it's cold and you're acclimated to the cold, and come back into the same room where it's the exact same temperature, but you're not perceiving it as chilly anymore. You're perceiving it as warm. This is what I'm talking about. And your thoughts, possibly, conceivably, are doing the same thing. Now, what I'm doing actually is I'm coming to, again, all these tangents, I can't even talk about it directly. because it breaks my brain. Because I'm talking about myself also. These thoughts that you have that make you avoidant. I mean, truly, that's it. It's not you were not born avoidant. Somebody didn't brand you avoidant. You live your life as if you were avoidant, therefore you are avoidant. It is the thoughts in your head and these protection techniques that you have developed over the years that are making you avoidant. It's not innate. It's not like, okay, yeah, I have 2 arms, I am avoidant. It's not a physical thing. It's part of your body. It is a thought process. And I bet you're doing the same thing that I'm thinking in my head, which is, where are you going with this? Am I saying, okay, well, then you can just change your thoughts and be different and not be avoidant? Nope, I'm not saying that. Again, it's a personality disorder. Your personality is these thoughts that you're having. They are one and the same. That is, against what sort of the general consensus of the world is right now, that you're not supposed to say that your thoughts are who you are. You are a separate person from whatever your ideals are that you are, living within this world. I mean, yeah, this is true. But sometimes the thoughts that you have are so integrated with who you are. I mean, you can't say it the other way completely. You can't completely detach yourself from your thoughts, because if you don't have thoughts, then you're not even a person. There's no self there. If there's no self, then there's no you, there's no personality, there's no nothing. Okay. Facts. This is why it's so difficult and why it breaks my brain. Facts are that the thoughts that you're having when you are enacting your avoidant personality disorder are not innate, are not who you are not immutable. They can change. They do change if you pay attention. This is why so many people say that people with avoidant personality disorder, as they get older, it gets easier. The thoughts do change. I mean, you get used to them. Things like the sharp pains of certain thoughts are dulled. You're just used to them. They become like background noise instead of something you're dealing with every moment. You figured out how to live your life so that you're not confronted by these thoughts so aggressively all the time. They become background noise. So they do change. They change in intensity, and they change in frequency. Facts. Which means, in theory, possibly, if you accept that the avoidant thoughts that you're having are just thoughts. I mean, again, I've talked about it before, that if you really pay attention, it's pretty obvious that you have a base personality of who you are, and then there are also avoidant thoughts that are sort of overlaid and sometimes supersede what your actual personality is. And that you can separate them, and you can clearly say, this is an avoidant thought I'm having versus this is a thought I'm having, meaning a more organic and specific individual personality thought. So if you can already separate the two and say, this is an avoidant thought and this is my thought, this is an avoidant thought and this is reality. Because these avoidant thoughts, a lot of them are just like out there, and you can tell that they are just like bonkers. Like, nobody will ever like me, despite proof that I have, like actively currently, that is just a falsehood. If that's a 100%, that, I'm incapable of being treated normally or whatever. Incapable. Really? No. That's not actually true. Might feel like that. Might be safer to keep that in mind and to sort of live my life to that baseline and say, okay, well, this is not something that I can have in my life, so therefore I don't have to, on a case by case, basis, actually interpret, because I could be wrong, I could be bad at it, I could let somebody in who's really going to mess me up. I might miss all the warning signs. So if I just say point blank, this is how it is across the board, I don't have to worry about letting the wrong one in, because nobody's getting let in. That's how it works, right? So delusion is basically an inaccurate, untrue thought that you have decided is how you're going to live your life, is going to guide your life. And again, delusions are pretty sticky. But in theory, knowing that, you could change those thoughts. How to do this? I have no idea. Is there anything in me that thinks it's possible outside of theory? No idea. To me, it's the same as, the crazy, chaos theory that says that a humpback whale could suddenly appear in front of me. I mean, that's not going to happen, but chaos theory says that it's a possibility, a very tiny, tiny possibility that it could happen. That's how I look at the possibility of actually truly changing my personality once it is quote unquote set, which is in the late 20s. I mean, you just can't anymore, right? Except that delusions are just thoughts, and they are not like factually accurate. They feel accurate, but they are not accurate. And a personality disorder works like a delusion. So you can look at your world and you can isolate avoidant thoughts from real thoughts. And in the very least, you can sort of turn down the intensity. In other words, okay, you have an avoidant thought, you don't have to obey it 100% of the time immediately. You don't have to. You can go, okay, that's it. Yeah, that's a good idea. Right. I hear that, but look around. I'm having an avoidant thought, but like, I'm in the forest and there's no human being around me whatsoever. So I don't actually have to like do whatever thing the avoidant thought is telling me. Like, hate on myself and know for a fact that nobody's going to want to interact with me, because guess what? There's nobody around to interact with me anyway, so I don't really have to worry about it, right? Now, I found out that this sort of loophole, I found out about it ages ago, sort of the backdoor way, without realizing it, when I realized that if I travel and I'm around people that I don't know ever, for some reason, most of the avoidant thoughts, if I don't ever have a possibility of interacting with these people ever again, I can dismiss them to a degree in certain categories and kind of live like a quote unquote normal life. Now, again, people are at extreme arm's length, but I can be around people that I would not have to be, I couldn't be, I can't even talk about it. I can't even say the words. I can't be around people I know and I'm going to know them, see them, interact with them again in the future. I can't be around them the same way that I can be. It's like freedom to be around people that I'm never going to be around again. That's me personally, and I know that a lot of people with avoidant personality disorder have the complete opposite. Like they can't be free around strangers, but they can be more free around people who know them. And I can't even conceptualize that, but I know that that's a fact, that there are some people, a lot of people, that are complete opposite of me. They can be themselves around their family only, and even the family that caused the chaos and the abuse that made them become avoidant person in the first place. They can be themselves around those people, even if they're their abusers, and they, in a way that they can't be around strangers. Whereas I'm the complete opposite. I can be around strangers way easier than I can be around people who know me and have known me for years. Facts. Okay? But if you know the sort of cheat code that avoidant personality disorder is not real, it's thoughts that you're having, it is self-protective thoughts. It's really helpful to you to have these self-protective thoughts, but they're not real. Even if you're only paying attention to all the times when it was validated and verified, there are how many billion people on this earth? You may have interacted with a few hundred of them. And yeah, maybe you got all duds, and all those 100 people, all those 1,000 people absolutely fit your idea of how people are going to interact with you, because you have avoidant personality disorder, because you are avoidant, because you have the black mark on your soul. But you have not interacted with everyone on the earth. And it could just be that you are sticking with what you know, and what you know is abuse. I can feel like I can see that I'm getting red. My skin is getting red at this concept. I'm the one saying it. I'm the one thinking it. I am the one that's getting like upset and heated over the idea of this. If that is happening to you, I'm really sorry. I'm not saying that you have to change anything. I'm saying the more you know, the better life is. And if you're aware that, honest to God, avoidant personality disorder it's based on thoughts. It's not quote unquote reality. You make it reality. And that means if you need to, or if there's specific area and case where you want to for short periods, you can change those thoughts and have a different reality. And who knows, maybe it will be someplace where you've changed it enough that, you've allowed yourself to have a life that you never thought you were capable of, and it's still safe. And so you may have moved that little fulcrum of your pendulum a little bit over toward a more satisfying, acceptable life. So I've talked about the pendulum theory quite a bit, that there's a midpoint, and if you push too hard to be social and to push against your avoidant personality disorder, you'll swing back, and it'll cause you to become a hermit and super depressed. And that's super common, and it's not permanent. It's just a reaction to going too far, but that you could move the pendulum a little bit, move that fulcrum a little bit, slowly and slowly. This is one way to do it, is recognizing that all the avoidance are thoughts that you are having as opposed to actual physical reality in this world. And that, therefore, because they are not 100% accurate physical fact reality, they can change. You can slightly change them. You can slightly alter them. You can allow them to be changed. You can be confronted with a different reality than what you think all the time, and accept the new reality and change your thoughts. You can do that. It will cause the fulcrum to move, and you might have a slightly better life. Incredibly stressful to actually think about doing that. What comes to mind is to say to give up the control of your life. Very, very stressful thing to do. So maybe don't. Maybe just allow it to happen, and don't force yourself back anytime things start to shift. If they do start to shift, you're not giving up yourself. You're not giving up your personality. You're giving up this thing that was overlaid on top of your personality. And that can shift and mutate, as horrible and stressful as it seems. Do I think that you can do it to yourself? Probably not. I think that reality will catch up with you, and eventually it will move. And I think the easiest way for it to move is if you're not even aware of it, and it just suddenly, I guess I can go grocery shopping and tolerate it when the checkout person says, "Have a good day," which sounds to some people ridiculous, and to some people it's like, no, that could never happen. And guess what? Maybe if you don't force yourself to stay in this one little narrow box of your personality in your life and say, this is who I am, maybe you can expand it just a little bit, move it just a little bit, and just have a slightly better life. Anyway, I'm very stressed from talking about this. So I'm going to stop talking about this. I'm not even sure if it made any sense. I know there were lots of tangents in there. Sorry if it's stressful. We'll see you next week.